I never imagined that a single sentence could change the course of my life. It began on Astera Prime, a planet floating in the outer rims of the Lyriath system, where the cities were built on cliffs suspended above endless clouds. The capital, Luminaris, was a jewel of white stone and crystal, bathed in perpetual sunlight from the twin suns overhead. I had come there as part of a diplomatic delegation, representing a minor human colony on the outskirts of the galaxy. My role was minor, translator, messenger, observer, but fate seemed determined to make me far more than that. The princess in question, Auriella Vera, was known across the system for her silence. She was shy, almost painfully so, and had never addressed anyone outside her inner court. Nobles whispered about her in hushed tones, calling her the quiet star or the invisible light, because although she was radiant and beautiful, she seemed distant, untouchable. I met her on the first day of the delegation's audience. The grand hall of the palace shimmered with crystalline chandeliers, and a light breeze from the open terraces carried the scent of exotic flowers. Auriella stood apart from the crowd, near the edge of a balcony overlooking the swirling clouds below. Her hair cascaded like liquid silver, and her eyes were deep violet, reflecting both curiosity and caution. When I was introduced, she didn't speak. She simply inclined her head slightly, her lips barely moving. It was the first time in my life I had met someone whose silence spoke louder than words. The first few days were torturous. I tried to engage her in conversation, carefully choosing my words, attempting to bridge the vast gap between us. Every time I asked a question, she responded with a nod or a small smile. Her eyes, however, betrayed more than her words ever could. There was intelligence, humor, and a subtle yearning I could feel but not reach. One evening, I found myself wandering the palace gardens alone, away from the ceremonial crowds. Auriella was there too, seated on a low stone bench beside a fountain that reflected the twin suns like liquid fire. She had been sketching something in a small notebook, her delicate fingers moving almost imperceptibly. "Princess Auriella," I said softly, not wanting to startle her. "May I join you?" She looked up, eyes widening slightly, then nodded. I sat beside her, careful not to invade her space. For several minutes, we simply watched the water ripple, neither of us speaking. Then, almost on impulse, I said, You have a remarkable way of seeing the world." Her fingers froze mid-stroke. She didn't respond immediately. I waited, heart pounding. Then, she tilted her head slightly, a faint color beginning to creep into her cheeks. I realized it wasn't embarrassment, it was something deeper, more vulnerable. The next day, a crisis struck the palace. A rogue faction from a neighboring system had sent a stealth attack ship, attempting to kidnap the princess during a public ceremony. Panic spread through the palace as guards scrambled and alarms blared. I was near the edge of the crowd when the attackers breached the security barrier, wielding advanced energy weapons. Auriella froze momentarily, her violet eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, I pushed forward, grabbing her hand. "Come with me," I shouted. She hesitated, then followed as I led her toward a hidden passage I had spotted during my first day in the palace. The corridors twisted and turned, leading us beneath the palace to the maintenance tunnels, which few ever used. As we ran, I realized something astonishing. She didn't need my guidance in terms of speed or agility. Despite her quiet demeanor, she moved with precision, reading the passages instinctively, avoiding hazards I didn't even notice. When we finally emerged into the relative safety of the palace gardens, she turned to face me, her expression a mix of shock, gratitude, and confusion. "You saved me," she said softly, her voice finally breaking the silence for the first time. "I couldn't let them take you," I replied, breathless. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say more, then she shook her head and turned away. But I noticed the red bloom creeping across her cheeks, unmistakable even under the soft twilight. Days passed, and I was drawn closer into her world. The palace court began to accept me, though reluctantly. Nobles whispered that the human diplomat had somehow earned the princess's attention, a feat none had managed before. Auriella, however, remained shy and cautious, interacting with me in small, measured steps. It was during one quiet afternoon, in the library of the palace, that everything changed. I had been helping her translate an ancient text, an account of a long-forgotten alliance between human and Lyriathian forces centuries ago. The parchment was delicate, glowing faintly with protective enchantments. "Kale," she said, her voice barely audible, "why do you help me so easily?" I looked up from the text, caught off guard by the question. "Because you deserve it," I said simply. Her eyes met mine, wide and startled. "Deserve? What?" "You deserve to be seen," I said, feeling a boldness I hadn't known I possessed. Not as a silent star, not as a symbol, not as someone untouchable. Just, as you. As beautiful you. I watched as her violet eyes widened in shock. Her face turned crimson almost instantly, and her hands clutched the parchment as if it could hide her. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, words failing her entirely. The library was silent. The sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows reflected in her eyes, making them shine like twin amethysts. For the first time, I saw vulnerability, honesty, and something entirely human. You think I am beautiful," she finally whispered, voice trembling. "Yes," I said, my own voice steady. "Very beautiful." Her shoulders hunched, a tiny laugh escaping her lips. It was soft, musical, almost embarrassed. I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," I replied. "Just know it's true." She smiled faintly, and in that moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of us. Her blush deepened, but there was a spark in her eyes, a light that had never been there before. The following weeks were a revelation. Auriella began to speak more freely, though still cautiously. She allowed me into her private chambers, teaching me about the traditions, rituals, and histories that governed her life. We shared meals, explored the palace gardens, and sometimes simply sat in silence, letting the energy of the twin suns and the floating city wash over us. One evening, she invited me to the terrace at sunset. The sky was a riot of pinks, purples, and golds, mirrored by the glassy spires around us. "Kale," she said, her voice soft, almost shy again. I feel something different. Because of you." I took her hand gently. "I feel it too." Her wings, faintly luminous even in the fading light, twitched with emotion. "I never thought I could be open to someone." "You don't have to think," I said. "You just have to feel." Her blush deepened, but this time it was mingled with laughter, warmth, and a sense of freedom I had never seen in her before. The turning point came during the Festival of Twin Suns, the most sacred celebration on Astra Prime. Nobles from across the system gathered to witness the lighting of the crystal spires and the ceremonial dance of the princesses. Auriella chose to dance with me, her hand in mine, wings outstretched but trembling slightly. Every eye in the room was on us, yet she did not pull away. She smiled at me, a mixture of pride, embarrassment, and trust. The blush on her face glowed like the reflections of the crystal lights around us. When the festival ended, she led me to the balcony overlooking the clouds below. The city stretched endlessly, golden and alive. "You've changed me, Kale," she whispered. "Not just because you called me beautiful, but because you see me. Truly see me." "I always will," I said. Her wings wrapped gently around me, and for the first time, I felt the depth of her trust, her affection, and her love. The shy, silent princess had finally found someone who could reach her heart. Years later, the story of the quiet princess who blushed at a simple compliment became legend throughout the Lyriath system. But for us, it was never about legend, it was about trust, growth, and connection. Every day, I watched her bloom into the woman she had always been, radiant and strong, yet tender and vulnerable. And I learned something important. Sometimes, a single honest word, spoken from the heart, can change everything. A simple truth, "You are beautiful," had unlocked not just her heart, but our destiny.